right, we're live. What's going on, my fellow wealth creators? Matty Ice here. We're going to have an awesome conversation today with my good friend Michael Garcia over at IC Life. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different on the channel. You know, I talk a lot about infinite banking, different wealth building strategies that I'm implementing. I'm really just sharing my journey. That's really why I started the channel. But today, I want to talk to Michael about the journey of entrepreneurship and overcoming the, in what sometimes seems like insurmountable challenges and obstacles and things like that. Because I was talking with Michael, we had a conversation a couple of months ago, and actually I think it was after we did some content. We just chatted. We just continued chatting afterwards, and you started telling me about your story, and I got goosebumps, man. I got chills listening to your story, and it's one of my favorite parts of entrepreneurship is listening to people's journey going down the path of being an entrepreneur, because we were talking before we went live that a lot of times we don't think it's gonna, we know it's gonna be tough, but damn, I didn't think it was gonna be this tough when you're going through it and you're in the middle of that shitstorm or whatever. It's like, okay, this is not what I was expecting. I knew it was gonna be a little tough, but a lot of times we don't really know what we're getting ourselves into. You hear stories about it, and you like to think that you learn from them. Maybe some of them you do, but a lot of times you don't. You end up having to make your own mistakes because everybody's path is different. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody's why is different, goals, etc. And so that all plays a factor into what that journey looks like. And I was very moved by your story. So I'm really grateful to have you on the channel to get you on here and just talk a little bit about your entrepreneur journey. And I figured where we would start is why you decided to take the path of really the unknown, because you never know what's really going to happen when you decide to take that leap of faith and start becoming an entrepreneur. Why not take the safe path and go to school, get the job, etc.? What really started you down your path as an entrepreneur? What's the why?
Yeah. So, I mean, I like to say life happened. So,
it has a way of doing that sometimes.
Yeah. I had a pretty solid job. And quite frankly, if I would have stayed at that job financially, I would have been okay for the rest of my life.
And what job was that? What were you doing?
Yeah, I worked for Semper Energy, Southern California gas company, a utility company here in Southern California.
Okay.
I started almost out of high school. I had one job in retail prior, but became a meter reader, which is an extinct profession now because they have smart meters to do the billing. But worked my way as a technician, got into the measurement and regulation side of things, kind of the bigger pipes. And then I got into the management role. I was a field supervisor of our group was about 24 employees, I think it was. And that was the position when I ended up leaving the gas company I was at. So, it was a nice 6-figure income, had a pretty nice bonus pretty much every year. Benefits were good, right? So that's why I say I could have, from a financial standpoint, I'll say this, I was okay. I was good. I bought my first piece of real estate at 24 years old.
Nice.
I got the job full time at 22. Before that, I was part time. But one thing I'll say is every year I was at that job, I always knew there was more in me, right? I wasn't reaching my potential.
Right. You weren't doing all that you knew you could do. You could be doing better.
Yeah. But because I was comfortable enough with the income, I didn't change that. Right. I was like, I had that feeling, but I stayed at that job for 15 years. So
it's called golden handcuffs right there. They got you.
Yeah. So I did not really change my mindset until my 30s. Mm-hmm. Right. And like I said, life happened. I had gotten married, went through some things there, ended up divorced, went through a custody battle, for my daughter. And at the time when we split, she was 3.5 years old. So when she was 5 years old, I got custody. And it really forced me to look back and just say, like, what do I got to do different? Right. How do I make time to be present when I want to be present? Right. And so that's really my driving force. Not only that, but one thing that I do know that helped lead to the divorce, and um, there's faults on both ends, right? She did some things that it's like, hey, but at the same time, it's like, hey, I wasn't present either. I was always working, and so I couldn't keep that same situation with my daughter, right? Because before, I was able to work 12-hour days, and I didn't think about it. 14-hour days, even some. By the way, sometimes there was emergencies, and it was 24-hour shifts. Right? He was a utility worker, and I was okay with that, thinking, okay, my daughter's at home with her mom. Right. And when I became a single dad, and her mom was no longer present, or in the picture at all, it's like, I can't do that anymore.
What's up, my fellow wealth creators? Sorry for the interruption, but just really quick, I wanted to let you know about my other company, Reduce My FICA, where we help business owners with at least 10 full-time W-2 employees significantly reduce their annual payroll taxes. I'm talking about saving $300, upwards of $500 per year per W-2 employee that gets put back into your bottom line, back into your business. By reducing your annual payroll taxes. And use a supplemental health and wellness program. Doesn't interfere with any health or medical coverage that you provide your employees. It provides them with incredible benefits, not to mention it's at zero net cost to them. In fact, a lot of the times employees see a net increase in every single paycheck. So there's a lot of benefits to the employees, and it can put a lot of money back into your business. So if it's something that you'd like to learn about, I'll have a link down in the description. You can also go to the website, reducemyficanow.com. We have free training and free guides and things like that to learn how the program works, and then schedule a call if you think that would benefit your business. So anyways, I appreciate your time, appreciate your support. I hope it helps, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. Here we go.
Right. So
that was one of the big defining moments there. Like, hey, I got to do something different.
Yeah.
She's not there anymore. And then also something I think really powerful you mentioned, where you weren't present. Maybe you weren't as present with your wife as you should have been, but you don't want to make that mistake with your daughter either. And sometimes the job that you have, it can be so demanding that you're not as present as you'd like to be. So it sounds to me like that was a big moment where you're like, okay, I need to do something different that gives me some time freedom back here, so that I can actually be present with my daughter. I summing that up.
Yep.
Accurately.
That's pretty accurate, right? Yeah, I remember some nights I was working. My mom would watch her, help me out. And by the way, I would drop her off at 5 a.m. to go to work. And I remember it being 7 p.m. and my mom texted me like, "Hey, Alyssa's waiting for you. When are you coming home?" And like, I don't know.
Right.
I didn't have an answer. Right. So I don't know. So I that's what began my search. And then the other part is, looking back at my marriage, how could I be a better husband in the future? Right. Not that I'm married right now, but if I want to get married again, how do I position myself where I can prioritize my family before a job?
Right.
So I keep that as, that prior experience as something I can improve on, so that I can get better. But really, my daughter's my driving force. So that's what got me started.
Love it.
That whole story is how I got custody is just by the grace of God.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that. Maybe we can get into that as we go through like the obstacles. I know that was a really big challenge for you, and I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, like, okay, so you make the decision and you start your search. What does that mean? What do you start looking for, and then what do you land on? What do you start doing? How did you figure out what's going to be like something that fires you up, gets you excited? How did you land on that?
Yeah. So ultimately, I was looking for a way to get ahead, right? How do I get ahead financially? How do I have money work for me? And that's really where I started. How do I looked at How do I become a real estate investor? How do I start to invest in stocks, like different things. Um, and it wasn't after my divorce. Well, there was a separation period, and what was interesting is during that time I went back to school because I thought maybe I could change careers, get a better job. But what I realized was I was going to go to school for 8 years to get a minimal raise because I was already making good money,
Mm-hmm.
and it might not end up the way I wanted, right? And so somebody exposed to me that, hey, you can give yourself your own raise. Like, if you're an entrepreneur, you can make money on your own. And so for me, it just made sense. Um, like, yeah, why don't I just give myself my own raise instead of waiting 8 years and hoping I get a position
Right.
as this new profession? Why don't I just take care of that now? Right. So I dropped out of school. I started, reading books on business, how to grow money, how to. I tell people I went to the school of Kiyosaki. Love the Robert Kiyosaki books. That was a big influence too.
That's always a good start.
Yeah, yeah. And so ended up getting into network marketing. Tried
Crazy
maybe.
how that typically starts the entrepreneur journey for so many people. That's kind of how I started as well, getting sucked into network marketing. That's interesting.
Yeah. And what I love network marketing. I think they teach some basic principles that every entrepreneur needs to understand. And if you want to scale a business, you need to understand how to duplicate, right? And
Right.
there's just success principles. So one thing I did like is, we never talked about products. We never talked about sales. We talked about leadership and we talked about duplication, how to
Right.
grow wealth. And the problem I had with the network marketing, after a year was I wasn't making any money in it. Right.
Not very
And
many people do.
yeah. And I learned how to recruit. So I'll say this, when I first got started, I had a mentor. He said, hey, Michael, because I'm an introvert, right? And you wouldn't know that if you met me today, or like you see me, oh, he's got an agency, he does his thing. But it was something I had to grow and learn to grow out of, right? And I remember when I first got offered an opportunity, I went through this education process on how to build wealth and live the life that you want to have. And I remember thinking to myself, like, dude, I don't know if I could do this, but this guy that I'm talking to, I believe he can get me there, right? And so I forced myself to grow, forced myself to get out of my comfort zone, start conversations.
It's kind of a requirement as an entrepreneur. You're going to be
Yeah.
constantly stepping outside of your comfort zone, and if you can't do that, you're not going to make it.
Yep. I learned how to recruit there. I consistently had 5 to 6 people on my team. The problem was I couldn't recruit as fast as to grow beyond that, right? At a fast enough pace. And I realized, like, after 3 months, people weren't making money, so they quit.
Right.
And then I recruit somebody, but they were just replacing somebody that had been there 3 months and just quit now, right? And so I told myself, okay, well, people need to make money now, right? And I started getting into real estate. I was actually did my real estate courses. I thought that might be a better route. And before I took my real estate exam, I saw the insurance business. Actually, what's funny is my final position at Southern California Gas Company, I had a boss, and he told me, he goes, oh yeah, we're always talking about ideas, how to make money. He was big in crypto, and he goes, oh yeah, I worked with WFG. I was like, oh,
good old WFG.
Yeah. He goes, I did it like 10 years ago. I was like, oh, well, how was your experience? He goes, I made like $2,000 a month, and I had like 5 people on my team. And I was kind of thinking about the way it is in network marketing. If you're making $2,000 a month and you have a team, because the growth is exponential, to me, it's like if you double again, now you're making like 6 or 8 grand a month, right? I'm looking at him like, you were one double away from like freeing yourself out of your job and you're still here? Like, what happened? And he goes, oh, I got afraid that I would have to quit my job if I got bigger. And in my head, dude, I was thinking like, dude, that's all I want to do right now.
Right.
So
sounds like the ultimate self-sabotage there.
yeah. Yeah. And so anyways, I reached out to somebody that I had met about 5 years prior because I knew he was with WFG. And he invited me to his grand opening. He had opened an office, and
Yep.
dude, he never told me there was an opportunity for me at that time. So I didn't actually attend the grand opening, right? Had I attended it, I probably would have joined at that time. But I reached out to him. I said, hey, I need to take another look at what you're doing. About 6 months prior, he did finally show me what was going on. And that's how I got in the insurance industry. I never took the real estate exam, jumped into the insurance industry. And I was determined. I found my way out.
You found the opportunity that was going to get you out. Like, okay, yep. This is it. I resonate with this. That's a whole other story too, because obviously you're no longer with WFG, and we don't tend to be huge fans of them. But so you identify your opportunity. What happens next? Because obviously, so like we were talking before, the opportunity can present itself, but oftentimes there's still so much that we have to do to grow ourselves, to step into the shoes of who we need to be in order to be successful with whatever opportunity it is, right? So there's oftentimes a significant amount of growth that needs to take place to see any significant amount of success with this kind of stuff, right?
Right.
And I know, again, just listening to your story before, I don't know how you want to get there, but I really want you to share the crazy stuff that you went through after. So you've identified the opportunity, you're working it. All right. How does it go? What do you experience? And eventually share what you shared with me a couple of months ago about like kind of where you hit rock bottom after making this decision. Walk us through that.
Yeah. So I find the opportunity. I'm like, man, this is it. Right. I can duplicate everything that I liked about network marketing. I still had that opportunity to do so. However, I can now make money on my own pen, right? I can write a policy. Right. I can get paid a big commission. And that to me was the missing piece, because had my team made money, they wouldn't have quit.
Sure.
Right. They would have kept going. And so I was like, okay, cool. Now we matched the network marketing with high ticket sales. Right. And now we can make some real money. And for me, that was it. Like, I saw the opportunity to duplicate that. Also, when it comes to need, right? I think, sometimes you're selling these vitamins, supplements, right, with these network marketing companies, and they might be, high quality, but they're priced higher than you could get at Costco. Right.
Right.
And so what I liked was when I saw the opportunity, is like, no, this is financial products that can actually help people. Right now, I didn't know anything about these products, and I've come to really not like the product that we were selling at that time, which, was
Did you sell a lot of IUL?
Sold a lot of IUL. Yeah. bought my own IULs, which I regret.
Many people do.
Yeah, and it's also,
that's okay. It's a learning process. It's a journey.
Yeah, and what I'd say about IUL is it's not what it's marketed to be, right? It's a financial tool. It can be used and sold correctly, but I definitely don't believe it's a tax-free retirement.
For sure.
Right. It does have its other uses. But yeah, at the time I saw this, I was like, dude, this is like the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? Like I'm all in on this. The story sounded great, right? Tax-free retirement. You can never lose money in the market, right? I didn't understand the risk involved or anything of that yet, right? So I got involved.
Just because a lot of times they don't teach you that.
Because they don't tell you. Yeah. They never.
They give you. Yeah, they give you what you need to make it sound sexy, so you can sell it and you can make money.
Right.
That way you stay.
Right. my first 2 weeks, and this is one thing I'll say, if you're an entrepreneur, like, number one, you got to have a mentor, and number two, you got to be extremely coachable.
Yep.
So my first, I want to say week and a half, even like 10 days, I got my license, passed my exam. I still had to wait for the state to process it, but I passed my exam for my license. I recruited 6 people in my first 10 days, and we had 3 sales.
Nice.
And I became a client, right? So it's just like doing what your mentor tells you to do. I'm very good at that, right? And so, it's crazy to me when I see people like they can't recruit or they don't, like, just do what you're told. Like you can learn this, just go through the process and develop yourself, leverage other people. So anyways, I got invited to like an elite training. He goes, "Hey, you're killing it this first week, dude. I know we typically don't invite new people. I want to invite you to this training." So it was like an elite training if I remember correctly, it was like on Saturday nights for 6 weeks, every other Saturday. And the final training, I remember like the guy at the top of the hierarchy comes up. Well, actually his wife said, "Hey, this is our business." And she went through page after page after page after page of people that they had promoted to their SMD title at WFG, which is like the top level. And they got, they showed this person's SMD, and this is the override that we made from that agency. And literally, the first page was the top 5, which my mentor was on that page. They averaged about 100,000 from each of them. Right. And then they went 16 pages deep, and she goes, "And this is just a third of our business." I just looked at that. I was like, okay, I'm all in. Right. That's what I want. If I had the skills at that time, keep in mind, my appointments weren't even set. Like I couldn't even sell yet, but I would have called my boss that day and been like, "Hey, I quit." Like I was tempted to do so even without the license being in place. But I told myself, okay, I need to be able to sell, and I need to be able to recruit. And so about 6 months in, I ended up in downtown LA, and I've been developing myself, right? Like, how hungry was I? I think this is where people don't get it. People think because they join a company or they get the license, like they're magically going to make this happen, right? And what people don't realize is I was working 12-hour days. I'm a single dad. I still got my license done in 10 days. I still recruited 6 people in those first 10 days. I still had sales, right? Even though I didn't get paid for it. When my daughter would go to bed, number one, I would make calls after work to set up appointments, right? I followed the system that they run. My daughter would go to bed at 9:00, and I was watching videos. I was reading books. I was learning how to run a business. I was learning how money works. I was running illustrations on the computer. I was, checking out different numbers. Hey, how does this affect the policy? How does this affect the policy? I was hungry, like flat out, right? I would go to bed at like 1 or 2 in the morning, meaning I was getting an extra 20 hours or even more of homework, of study time on the business. Most people would be in bed. Mm-hmm. By the way, I was still waking up at 5 a.m. to drop my daughter off. And I can remember one morning, my daughter looked at me. She's like, "Dad, why are you so tired?" And she's, at this point, she's at least she's 8 or 9. I think she's 8, actually. And I just looked at her. I said, "Because you're worth it.
Mm-hmm.
You're worth it. Like,
I love that.
You're I'm doing this for us because I want to provide better for you." Right. But that was my answer, because you're worth it, And I know she didn't get it at the time, but that's truly why I'm so tired. Like, I'm going to make this happen, period.
It's awesome.
So 6 months in, I'm downtown LA. I tell another buddy, I ran into a guy who used to work for SoCal Gas. Well, he became an entrepreneur. He was an engineer. He decided to open his own engineering firm. And what's cool is he actually, because of the connections he had with SoCal Gas became one of his first clients. So he got a lot of his contracting work through SoCal Gas. now as a business owner. So anyways, I run into him downtown at the headquarters in downtown LA.
And real quick, have you quit your job at this point?
No, I
You're still working?
hadn't. My goal was to quit my job. I told you there was a bonus, so I was going to wait. This was summertime. I was going to wait till the following March, like save up some more money, save reserves, get my bonus,
right?
And then okay, let's go for it, right?
Gotcha.
But what happened was I have this discussion. His name's Depot, and I have this discussion with Depot. We go out to lunch there in downtown LA, and I tell him like my plans. Tell him I'm saving for reserves, and he literally just stopped me right there. He said, "Michael, your reserves don't matter." He goes, "Think about this. Whether you have 2 months of reserves or 2 years of reserves, they're going to run out if you don't perform. The only thing that matters is that you can perform."
Right. Yeah, I like that.
And I've been grinding to develop myself, right? And I was actually pretty happy with where I was skill set wise. My ability to close business was solid enough. I knew I could recruit. And after that lunch, I actually put my 2-week notice in at that time. I was like, you know what? I can produce. I can do this. And so I jumped all in, right? Said, hey, I took all my vacation time, ran that out, got paid for it. And then I put my notice in. I ended up quitting in August, or I think my last official day was in September of that year. So,
gotcha. So you burn the ships.
Burn the ships, right? And I think every entrepreneur at some point, they have to burn the ships, right? You want to take the island, you got to burn the boats. The problem I see in the industry, though, is too many people tell new entrepreneurs that don't have a skill set in place, they can't close business yet, to burn the boats.
So they do it too early.
So they do it, and they don't have the ability to make money.
Yeah, now you're screwed.
Right.
Now your journey becomes even more difficult a lot of the times.
Yeah. And so like I said, the reserves don't matter. You could have 6 months of reserves, but if your skill set's not there, it's going to run out.
Right.
Likewise, you can have 0, but if you have the skills, you can just go and make money.
Sure.
All right. So I always tell people, like, your sets are going to set you free. Your mindset and your skill set. That's the mindset that, hey, I can go make my own money. And that's the skill set to actually back that up.
I like that. Your sets are going to set you free. Your mindset and your skill set.
Absolutely.
So write that one down.
Yeah. So I jumped in, had a rude awakening. I realized I did not have the skills to be my own boss yet. That was something that had not been developed. For 15 years, I was an employee, right? I got told, hey, you be here at 7 o'clock or you be here at 6 o'clock. You go home at this time. This is what you do. And so, and my mentor told me, he goes, you got to watch out. I had actually just started dating this girl too. He goes, what do you know? As soon as you're, put your 2-week notice in, all of a sudden you got a girlfriend. He goes, by the way, that pain, like you're fighting hard because you have a pain. You want to leave your job so bad. Well, when you leave that job, that pain's not going to be there anymore. And now you have to be disciplined to show up.
Yep.
Right. And he gave me some other things. My ex-wife, the day after my final day at the job, I get a notice that she's taking me to court. She's been gone for 5 years. No communication with me or my daughter. And all of a sudden we're going to court for custody. I'm like,
so right after you put your 2 weeks in.
Yeah. And it's funny because my mentor told me, hey, things are going to happen. Just be ready.
Yeah. Like man, that's so crazy. It's wild timing.
Yeah.
Like, of course, that's when it would happen. Couldn't happen when you were nice and cozy at your job, maybe being a little bit better. But now you just put your 2 weeks in, and now you got this whole other problem to deal with. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, it was insane. It was, my parents. My dad was proud of me. He told me, he said, hey, I don't know what the end of the road looks like for you, but I'm proud of you that you had the guts to do it. My mom, on the other hand, was not supportive, and she was the one that would help me with my daughter. All of a sudden, because I didn't have a job, she's like, well, you can watch her, like.
Right. You have all this time on your hands now.
Right. Like I didn't have anything to do. And so it's like right when I need the most help,
Right.
I got the least help. Right.
Bummer.
So yeah, I ran into some challenges right out of the gate. My bank account started running dry.
It's crazy how fast that can happen too, right? You think you have 6 months of reserves or however much. Usually you can cut that in half.
Yeah.
Because there's always stuff that comes up that you just did not prepare for.
Yeah, like I said, I just started dating someone, so of course you want to like go out and do things too, and
sure.
So that was kind of unexpected, but really, I wasn't showing up every day like I needed to, and so the income, the pipeline wasn't full.
Right.
Right. And so yeah, it caused a lot of struggle. I ended up being facing foreclosure on my home. I remember I was 88 days late on my mortgage. Yeah, I remember going in the field 0 for 4 one day, and my girlfriend at the time, she said, "What's Plan B?" I was pretty emotional, just like, mad at my mom for the lack of support and help, and just not happy. But when she asked me what was Plan B, it's like there is no Plan B.
There is none.
Like,
it's do or die.
And I remember I did briefly, and I'm very briefly, I mean like an hour, go look for a part-time job. I'm like, okay, well maybe I can have like a business building job part-time, so I can still do this full-time versus having a full-time job and doing this part-time. I stopped. By the time I went to the second place, they're like, hey, we want to hire you. Are you ready to give your life to us? And as soon as I heard those words, I was like, I remember that's what I didn't want. Right.
Yeah.
And I just had this sinking feeling in my stomach. So I walked out. And when I walked out, it was actually with Toyota. I just remember realizing like, yeah, I'm unemployable. I will never have a job ever again.
Yeah.
So I doubled down. I said, okay, we're going to make this happen. And I just got busy.
It's hard to go back to a job, like, especially since if you've been out of it for so long, it's really hard because your mindset has shifted so much around being the entrepreneur and building your own empire and in your own thing here. Like this is my thing here that I'm working on, versus having to go back to part of what motivated you to be an entrepreneur in the first place. Like that's tough to do, man.
Yeah. And I think you have to align you have to get clear on what you want, and you have to align your principles, right? You have to live by them. And one of the things my first mentor pointed out was, he said, you're not living by what you say is most valuable to you. You're not living that out.
Right.
And what he did was he had me write a list. He said, hey, write down what's most important to you. So I put like my God, my family, friends, my household, my values, right? All sorts of things. And he goes, well, so where's your job, Michael? Right. Because I was still employed. And I was like, I don't know. Like,
there's your first sign right there.
Right. And it was the first time that I realized that I didn't have any purpose in my job. I didn't value it. I only value it.
It's how you make your money. That's it.
I'm just going there to make a paycheck. Right. Yeah. Now it's a better paycheck than most, but I was still just going for a paycheck. And he said, okay, Michael, write down where you spent all your time and money last week. And of course, the job was at the top of the list. And the rest of the list was basically my values, but the inverse, in reverse.
All right.
It was upside down. And that was the first time I realized I'm not living the way I say I want to live. Right.
Right.
And so that was really the driving force. Like you can't go back. Like once you identify that, and once you make a decision to change your life and live off principle, off values, yeah, it's real hard to.
It's hard to go back to something that goes against it.
Right.
Right. Because now it feels even worse to be at something like the job that you were at. Right. The problem is you got to put food on the table. And if what you're working on is not working yet, because these things take time, your principles don't put food on the table. Your principles don't pay the mortgage. You have to produce, right? So you say to her that I'm unemployable, but you have to make money. So what do? What happens next?
Yeah. Well, remember I told you I had the ability to close business. Now, is it the same ability that I have today? No, nowhere close. Right. But I could probably still close 50% of my appointments at that time. I remember that the thing that for me changed that, so just skyrocket my close ratio was my mentor came out to one appointment because he was securities licensed and I'm not. And so he was going to put a Roth IRA in place. Anyways, I sold him the insurance. He goes, you sell the insurance, I'll take care of the Roth. And I remember pushing them towards a term policy because their budget was low. And I understood as little of the downside that you're told about IUL in these particular companies, right? Like the WFGs, the PHPs. One thing I did know, because of course I was a client for myself. So I ran illustrations for me, for my daughter. I knew $100 a month, like really doesn't make sense, right? At all. You're not going to get the accumulation because you have too much cost of insurance relative to the amount you're putting in. Right. And then the other part is, well, your family's underinsured, right? Because how much coverage are you getting? And if something happens to you, it's like, no, you need a term policy. But one thing I realized was they really wanted the permanent policy. They really wanted an IUL when I showed them the options, and I pushed them, I closed them. And so we wrote the application, but then they didn't sign the paperwork and they ghosted me. And I remember my mentor said something super important. It's probably the most single best piece of advice I've ever gotten. It wasn't advice. He made a comment. He said, it felt like you closed them, not like you helped them.
Okay.
And when he said that, I knew exactly what he meant, right? I didn't help them get what they wanted. I closed them to the direction.
Them on the term policy, not the IUL.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct. Even though they definitely wanted the IUL based on the knowledge that we had at the time. So, but I didn't give it to them. Right. I told them like, no, you need the term, like this is going to be what's best for your family. And so I learned a lesson, right? And going forward, my closing ratio went up to like 90% on these appointments. Nice. And so it made a huge difference. But back to the question, like, what did I do? I doubled down. I said, okay, I'm going to go prospect. I'm going to go door to door. I'm going to go to business. I'm going to find people who need coverage because I'm not going back to a job. Right. I did some like Lyft driving on my terms on my schedule, but yeah, I wouldn't go get a job. I wouldn't go get a set hours. So that was out the door. Right. Now, the one thing that did happen was as I'm going through this, I got to a point where I'm starting to close business pretty consistently. Right. I would say between $15,000 and $20,000 of production every month. No leads. So anyone that says you need leads in this industry, you absolutely don't need leads. You just have to be hungry and go get it. The problem was at WFG, I started at a 24% contract and I had graduated to a 36% contract. So even though I was closing 15, I was bringing home like 5.
Right.
And I'm here in Southern California, right? It's like, I got to pay some bills. And that's what caused me to start looking. I also noticed my team I was, I'd recruited a team. I had about 10, 13 licensed agents on my team that were actively showing up to meetings every, Wednesday and every Saturday. But they weren't making money either. And I said, okay, well, how do I get people to a position where they can free themselves? How do I make this a better opportunity for my team? And I think ultimately as an entrepreneur, you got to think that way. It's like, how do you blaze a path for the people behind you?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I started realizing I'm on 36% comp, but there's other companies out here talking about 70, 80, even 90% comp.
Right.
And I said, okay, if I were to jump from 36 to 90, all of a sudden I'm bringing home like 13,000 compared to 5,000.
Right.
And like you said, you got to put food on the table. Right. And I'm like, that's $8,000 that me and my daughter are not getting right now.
Yeah.
So I decided to leave, made the jump to go a more independent route. Obviously I knew I could still recruit, but I said, hey, I can also help my agents have higher contracts too, so they can actually make this jump with me.
Right.
Right. And so that's what pushed me to end up. I actually left WFG knowing that. I had basically planned to join like a private, pretty small like private company, but I took the guy out to play golf with me and my buddy, and he ended up fighting with my friend. And I was like, dude, I can't have a partner like that. So that didn't work out. And I already quit WFG. So it took me about 2 months, and then I ended up meeting somebody at Family First.
Family First Life, FFL.
Family First Life, yeah. So I ended up joining there. The move was a good move in some ways. The things that the reasons I made the move, the commissions, number one for me and my daughter, that ended up being important because I was able to recycle that or fund it back into my business. And then also for other people to have higher commissions, we were able to now expand pretty fast. We saw people leave their jobs. People actually start to make money in the business, right? And so within 18 months, I hit the senior sales manager, then the VP level, and we were closing in on about 200,000 a month within 18 months.
Nice.
So
that's pretty solid. So that was a good move.
That was a good move until it wasn't.
Yep. So it's not. So it looks like you have entered the promised land at that point, but it's not always the case, right?
Yeah. One of the things you gotta, our industry is, how do you say it? It's full of sharks.
That it is, man.
And so
great whites.
They say when one person has money and the other person has experience and they meet, the person with experience walks away with the money and the person with the money walks away with experience.
Right.
So the marketing and the one thing Family First Life does very well is market. They market extremely well. But the way that they promote how to build your business, there's a lot of traps involved, right? One of the things was they told us, you can recruit, just put people like 5% below you. Well, coming from WFG, I never dealt with a chargeback. Right? We sold mostly bigger permanent policies. One thing when you sell IULs, when you sell whole life, when you sell annuities, is you don't really deal with chargebacks. So I didn't know how the chargebacks work. I did not realize I was bringing people on board and taking on massive liability for them.
Right.
For pennies.
Right.
I had no idea.
The reward was not worth the risk, but the risk was also, would you say it just wasn't disclosed very well?
It wasn't disclosed at all, right?
Yeah.
It's something that most people getting into a company like that, they're not going to realize it until it's too late, until they're already trapped in the debt.
Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of what happened with me. Because
what happened? Walk us through that. What exactly happened?
Yeah. So basically just went all in didn't see any downside, just like started recruiting people. We had started developing different systems. I mean, we were recruiting 50 to 100 people every month. Obviously, not all of them get licensed, not all of them, produce. But we were becoming like this machine. That's why we grew to 200,000 pretty quickly. But yeah, I was on most of the agents, I was making like 5%. Meanwhile, they were getting paid like 100%, and I was liable for all of it. So what happened was chargebacks.
Because it's being advanced, right?
It's being advanced.
The commissions
right?
are being advanced.
Yeah. So
and if you get a chargeback, somebody has to pay for that.
Right. And unfortunately, a lot of this, I didn't know much about chargebacks, right? And we were selling a product that charges back at a higher rate because there's a lot of final expense being sold there, right? Now, I still kind of ran my own business, like for my clients. I still sold more like IUL and things like that. But a lot of my teammates that I recruited, they followed the training. They were selling final expense. They were racking up, big advances. And sure enough, seniors on low budgets, right? They're going to cancel.
Right.
They're just look at inflation, right? So we start getting chargebacks. Agents don't pay the chargebacks because they don't have money. Right. And guess who's liable for all of it? Rolls up to me, right?
Yep.
There was 1 month, just to give you an idea how bad it was, Matt. There was 1 month we did about 170,000 in production, and I was a net negative on the month because of the roll-up debts.
Oh my God, man!
As far as what I made.
How the hell do you build a business on that? That math does not add up. That's crazy.
Yeah, and it's simply because I didn't know, right? And we were also promised these bonuses. And I remember, so the meeting, the day that I decided to leave, I still had this like, okay, I'm dealing with these chargebacks, but we're still growing at such a rate. These bonuses are about to kick in.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being in the leadership meeting with the CEO there, and they just made this big announcement. They were completely restructuring the bonus structure.
Oh, man.
By the way, they had already reduced it 2 other times, but this one was like, they're adding, you have to have 3 legs at this much before you even get a bonus on the first 2 legs. And they changed it pretty significant. And I realized that my bonus I was at 150,000. That's when you can start to think about the bonuses. And I was, between 150 and 200. So I was just on that cusp, and all of a sudden those bonuses were just moved like that. Right.
Wow.
And I started realizing, the attitude goes, you guys don't deserve the bonus. You guys think you can build this agency and live off that. Like, you guys should be in the field. And I just realized, like, there's no freedom here because this guy doesn't want us to be free.
Right. It's its own little prison there, its own version of financial prison at that point. It's part of the problem with that too, is, I mean, you're completely out of control of any of that. They want to change the bonus structure. They're going to change the bonus structure. What can you do about it?
Yeah.
Right? You have zero control of that.
100%. So
you didn't get any of the bonus. They completely moved the goalpost.
Yep.
So they don't help with the chargebacks and the debt roll up, but they're happy to push the bonuses further away from you.
Yeah. Not to mention the bonuses, they started limiting it even more. So it was like Americo, AIG, all final expense products mostly.
Yeah.
Mutual of Omaha, they counted for the bonuses, but because I did sell IUL, like I was using like North American, National Life Group, they didn't even count that premium towards the bonuses.
Why?
Just the structure, I think, because they make more money off the final expense products.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, the contracts are higher. So when you even as an agent, they promote going up to 145%. I was at 130 when I left, but I would get 130 on final expense. But if I wrote an IUL, I would get like 90. So I think it just has to deal mostly with their contract levels.
Right. And I'm just thinking about, like, I mean, obviously the commission structure, that sounds really good. but when you have the possibility, like the setup of what it is, where you have all of these chargebacks and you're responsible for it if the agent doesn't pay, that's where those high contract rates or those high advance rates can actually become a significant liability to you as the agency owner at that point. That's where it gets, so it's kind of a selling point where like you can make really good commissions up front on this because we're going to advance you, but at the same time, it's not really good for you in the sense that it creates a lot of liability. It creates a lot of risk.
Yeah. And
at the same time.
Today I run my agency. We will advance up to 2 carriers, but everything else is as earned.
Right.
And the whole idea is we understand some agents, the advances help, right? And if you're investing back into your business, it could definitely be a big boost. But at the same time, we don't want agents to feel like, okay, I got a chargeback here. Let me just go write a different carrier where I don't have a chargeback, and I'll just go to carrier 2, carrier 3, carrier 4. It's like, no, you're limited to 2. So if you want to continue to get advanced, you need to write over those chargebacks and pay them back. Yeah. Right. So otherwise, everything else is as earned. So that's kind of the structure that we've adopted. And so everybody who comes on board with us, so our team, they all understand, they want to build a team.
Mm-hmm.
So they understand, like, I don't want to take on that liability either.
Right. And you're talking about, because you're not with FFL anymore. You're with Life180, right?
Yep.
Just to be clear on that. So obviously you've learned your lesson, all right? You know what to look for, a much better way of structuring it. But finish up with, so like what happened? So they moved the bonus, you got this debt rolling up. Eventually you leave FFL, right? When you come to that decision and what happens next?
Yeah, I came to that decision during that leadership meeting. I just realized this guy's not working for the agents. He's working against me here. And kind of the traps, even with the mindset, right? Like the mindset is, oh, if you're not getting the top comp, then they're ripping you off. And it's like, there's no room for the mentor to help out. They just get to take on all the liability.
Right.
And it's on them. It's not on Family First, right? So Family First still gets all the production. They win. They sell the leads, but the upline takes all the debt and chargebacks and stuff. So,
man, it's messed up.
Just started realizing the different traps and kind of the way things actually work. And, I was like, well, this guy's genius because he marketed it as this is the way it should be. And you feel, like shame on you if you're not, doing this, but you start to wake up. And so I decided to leave that day right after that meeting. Was no doubt about it. Just the attitude towards it. I was like, okay, I'm awake. So then I started shopping around. I started interviewing people, all the big companies that you know of, and some smaller companies, the Symmetries, the Equises, the Experior, right? And kind of getting an understanding of all their comp structures, of what they have available, their beliefs. And by this time, I was pretty aware of how IUL works, right? In fact, part of why I built that team was because people would come to me to train on IUL. And so, I was looking for something that I can grow, would be profitable. And this is an area where I really struggled, right? Family First got wind that I was, not my direct upline. She was looking for a way out too. And she has also since left, but her upline above her, as soon as he got whiff that I was leaving, basically kicked me out the door, moved everybody's commissions up. So I didn't have any, renewals, moved them out from under me or any, overrides.
And that's where you learn you really don't own your business.
Yep.
That's something like that, man. That's crazy.
Yep. Own nothing. Right. And so, it was a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
Right.
So you take a pretty, it sounds like you would take a pretty big pay cut at that point.
Yeah. They didn't release me from my contracts. I wasn't going to sell for them. I wasn't going to recruit. And so even prior to that, my agency did start to dip, right? Because I'm not adding any new recruits. So we went from about 175 down to like 150. Then the next month we did 130 in production. I think the last month I was officially there, we did 120. But yeah, it was, remember, I was still liable.
For all
Still
the
had
debt.
no liability. So what
They
happened
take your
was,
commission, the renewals, commissions, whatever. They take that away, but you're still liable for the debt.
yep.
Whew,
Yep.
man. Sounds like a cult to me.
So anyways, I end up, I would say about $45,000 of debt.
Oh my God.
At that time. It ended up being, well, maybe more like 40. It ended up being total like 60. Some of the carriers, right? The chargebacks came in later. The roll-up debt came in later. And then I had one guy, I finally got some contracts. I was like ready to go. And one of my, recruits that started with me at that time commits fraud and takes me for about 12K. Right.
Wow.
So it's like, I'm my contracts. I'm trying to figure a way to make money. I went back to driving Uber, Lyft, right? Trying to figure out my contracts. I have no income coming in, massive debt piling up,
Ugh.
and
It's a
it was
scary
rough.
scenario to be in, man.
It was rough. And then I finally get contracts, and the first thing that happens is a guy takes me for another 12 grand, right?
Mm.
And it's like, geez. Anyways, I continued to do some shopping. I got some wholesale contracts, started direct contracts. Even had a quick stop at Symmetry. Just realized nothing wrong with Symmetry themselves, but just the particular person I was associated with, or recruited under, not anywhere I want not anywhere I want to be around or aligned with, right? And so I found that out within about a month. So that was a very short stint. So I'm just trying to find my way, right? And during this time, I'm still having my bills. I still got my daughter to take care of. And I got to the point, Matt, I took a picture because I knew a year or two in the future. This was actually last May. Went out driving one Sunday, and this is how crazy it is. This is why I also have like a faith that everything's going to work out. Woke up one Sunday, I'm trying to make this happen. More debt came in. I have $5.43. So I took a snapshot.
So you go from having almost $200,000 per month in production.
Yeah.
To $5 in your bank account.
Yeah. But I mean, even as the year prior, the same time, I was making over 10 grand passively, like in just in overrides,
right,
a month. Right. Plus, any business that I did was bonus. So I went from that to like all this debt. There's no more overrides. There's no income. I'm trying to figure out where to go, get the contracts set. Like I said, had a couple stops, and it's like, this just isn't the place. So I can't do business here. But yeah, it got to that point where I'm trying to pay back these debts. And all of a sudden it's like, I got $5.43. I go out driving, and that day was a pretty incredible day because I ended up driving near this church that was having like a food bank.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it. I was like you said, it's got to put food on the table, right? And I remember sitting in the parking lot. I didn't want to do it, but I had to swallow my pride and say, you know what? I got an opportunity to get some food. I'm going to take it. Took that home to my daughter, and then I kept driving. I end up meeting this guy. And keep in mind, I don't even have money to fill my gas tank. So like when my gas runs out, I can't even make more money, right? This is it. And I had moved to Washington, so I'm in Tumwater, Washington. I picked this guy up. Turns out he's a truck driver, and his truck broke down, so he's staying there for a couple of days. So I take him to the train station. He goes, on the way to the train station, he goes, "Hey, you think you could pick me up from Seattle?" And I was like, I'm thinking in my head, like, dude, I can't afford to go there and you not show up, right? And so I told him, I said, yeah, I'll do it for 100. I said, but I need payment up front. And he goes, tell you what, I'll give you half now and half when you pick me up. I was like, okay, fair enough. So he gives me $50 cash, and I drop him off at the train station. I'm like, okay, I have enough gas for like 1 or 2 more rides, and then I need to save this money to go to Seattle, right? I do one quick ride, and then I get another one, and I didn't see where it was at. So anyways, I'm going this ride. I pick them up. They're like, you ready to go to Portland? I was like, what? So in this day, I like, okay, I got to get gas. So I put the $50 the guy gave me in gas. If he didn't give me that $50, I could not even deliver on this ride, right?
Yeah.
It's a $200 ride to go to Portland.
Nice.
So I drive 2 hours south to Portland. And now it's like, okay, I got to work my way back to Seattle from Portland. Anyways, I ended up meeting the guy in Seattle. Dude, I got there on an empty tank.
Man.
And I told him again, I was like, hey, I'm empty, dude. I kind of told him, like, honestly, dude, I woke up with $5 today, man. I need the money now so I can put it in gas. So he gave me the money. He actually took me to this like iced coffee place just to chill in Seattle for a minute. And then we drove back to Tumwater. He was staying at a hotel that was right near where I was living. So, dude, I made, and you wouldn't even believe I made this much driving Uber, but I made $540 that day.
Wow. That helps.
And I got a refrigerator full of food. And so
life just has a way of delivering sometimes. There's a way, like in the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about how sometimes, I mean, life has a way of showing up, punching you in the face, ruining all your plans. But then it also has a way of showing up when you need it the most as well.
Yep. By the way, that guy ended up becoming a client of mine as well. We were talking. He ended up buying a policy.
That's awesome.
A decent size one too. It was. I ended up getting enough money to move back to Southern California.
So would you say that was kind of the low point?
That was the
rock bottom, low point. That's where you started to get back on the upward trajectory a little bit.
Yeah. Finally got some contracts settled. So I had got some direct contracts. I had added some contracts, and this was just another kind of roadblock. This guy ended up cutting me out. Started to build a team. I actually trust the guy a little bit. I kind of saw some manipulation, so I was aware. And sure enough, once I had a certain amount of people on my team, kind of tried to cut me out of that and take them from me. And so
a lot of just shady people, man.
Yeah, there is. And so I said, okay, well, I need to just do my own thing.
Yeah.
So I had like I said, wholesale contracts, direct contracts. That's when I decided to start IC Life. I ended up meeting Chris around that time. Basically, I had been selling IUL, and I started watching Chris's videos, right? Like, there's a lot of risk on that back end, more than, and even me being aware of that risk, like, this is what we need to do to manage that risk.
Right.
When I saw the numbers actually broken down, I was like, that's more than I can stomach, and that's more than I can sell.
Right.
So then that was another shift, right? It's like, okay, I need to shift how I'm selling life insurance. So that was a kind of an obstacle, but not at the same time. It wasn't. It was just an adjustment.
Yeah, it's more of an adjustment than.
Yeah,
I mean, it's manageable. You can make that adjustment. You've been through worse than that before.
Yeah, yeah. So, anyways, I go through this phase too of calling all the IUL carriers. Hey, what's in place? How can we prevent this? And uh, just not being satisfied with the answers I was getting.
Right.
And I said, okay, I got one final question, but I'm going to call Chris.
Mm-hmm.
So I called Life180. Ended up talking to Tyler and then to Matt. And Matt basically said, hey, if we're on this mission, we're looking for people that want to be on this mission to educate people like properly. And of course, for me, I'm like, yeah, I'm all in. I've been watching Chris's videos for the last 6 months, doing all this research, and so I made that jump. I said, hey, he goes, basically, we're going to contract you with Lafayette and One America because you can keep all your other contracts. You're good. And I said, yeah, dude, I really value this partnership. I saw the just in Chris's character, number one, and then the ability to do my own thing, not have, that was kind of the issue with some of the other upline I had was they wanted you to conform to the way they
Right.
wanted business ran.
Right.
And I was like, no, I'm going to do things my way. It's how I've always done them. And so to have that freedom along with the partnership, that made I was like, yeah, dude, I'm all in.
It's a good match.
So, yeah, we've been growing. It's funny
I'd
how,
say so.
yeah, it's funny how things can go, like I said, from like 10 grand in overrides to, you got $5.43 in your bank account. And then 6 months later, I was back to making over 10 grand a month again.
Right. And before we hopped on the call, you were telling me about all the annuity business that you have in the pipeline right now. It's going to be massive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's crazy how fast things can turn around in both directions.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, ultimately it's like, I think in times, I think there's different times in my story where most people would have quit.
100%.
Right.
I was just about to ask you, like, just to kind of sum everything up, what your biggest lesson was during all that. And that's exactly what I was going to bring up with you, because in those moments, a lot of people quit. And can you blame them? I can't.
No.
Right. Like, what do you think it was that kept you going? Well, what's the lesson there? What's the biggest thing you took away from it?
Yeah, a few things. I had a friend ask me recently. She said, "Dude, I'm proud of you. Like most people would have quit. Like, what kept you going?" And in particular, the second time after leaving family first, what kept me going was I knew who I was. Like, honestly, I'm too damn good.
Right. Because at that point, you've seen what you can do.
Yeah.
You've seen what you've built. You know you're capable of it. Maybe you're just in the wrong environment now. Like it's time to change the environment that I'm bringing my skill set to.
Right. Right. And yeah, like I had personally recruited 83 people in a month.
That's crazy.
Direct. Right. I've personally written, $20,000, $30,000 of business. Yeah, it's like there's a point when your skill set is at a point where you can't see yourself doing anything else. It's like, dude, I'm too good at this to stop.
Right.
Right. But I'd say what kept me going before that was this was the way to take care of my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did pretty quickly, because I understood this, like if I quit this business, I go back to what?
It's a good question. Good question. Oh, I'm going to write that down.
Right?
You guys should write that down too. When you're thinking about quitting, going back to what? Ask yourself that.
I go back to what? Yeah. It's like I go back to Southern California Gas Company with my tail between my legs and beg for a job back.
Yeah.
exactly what I was trying to get away from. Like
Mhm.
I was trying to earn the freedom, not have somebody in control of my schedule, not be on call all the time. Be like I said, be able to take care of my daughter, uh, pick her up from school, things like that. Like I said, back to the why, like even, in a future marriage, being able to be the husband I want to be.
Right.
It's like, dude, like I can't go back. It's not who I am.
Right.
It doesn't align with who I am. And so that's one thing I did pretty quickly in the business is I aligned myself with the business. And I think too many people, they get in with the mindset of, I'm going to try this thing out. I'm going
Right.
to see if it
It's gonna
works. But for me, it was
test the waters a little bit. That's it.
right. For me, it was total alignment. Right. And then I looked at it as what I did was I married my goals to my business. Right. Because if I don't make it in this business and I go back to a job, then I didn't reach my goals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be there to pick my daughter up every day from school or drop her off, which I've done for the past 5 years. Right. I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not going to be able to prioritize my spouse in the future or take a day off when I want to take a day off. Right. I'm not going to be able to do these things. And so for me, my goals were married to the business. So quitting on the business to me was like quitting on my daughter. It was quitting on my future. It was quitting on the things that I want to do. It wasn't even quitting on the business. And what I realized is when people quit the business, they don't quit the business. They quit on themselves.
That's a good point. I like that.
And so, yeah,
very true.
One person I was never going to quit on was myself. I have a strong faith in God too. So I felt invincible in some ways, even when I'm taking the beating, I know it's, it's just a test, right? And it's like, I know
Gotta come through.
I know what's on the other side. Yeah.
Pushing through Job-like lamentations. That's how it's been told to me before. And obviously, certainly not going to quit on your daughter either.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, it's those moments right there. You really find out if your why is strong enough. Like how strong is that why that got you started down this path? Because if you throw in the towel, not strong enough.
Yeah.
Right. Got into it for the wrong reasons, maybe. Who knows? Right. 1,000 different things. But
yeah. And one other thing is kind of going through that process, like when you take action, and this is also like you got to take action, because when you take action, like you just said, like allowing God to show up, you have to take action to allow God to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. When it came to my daughter, I had to fight for her. Right. I had no custody rights. I started seeing issues. I fought for her. Right. I remember one night I prayed and I said, God, I don't know what your plans are for her or for me, but I want her. I want to raise her. If you give her to me, I promise she'll grow up to know you. Matt, within an hour, I got a phone call from the Orange County Sheriff's Department. This Michael Garcia, yep, you need to come pick your daughter up right now.
Mm-hmm.
Her mom was being arrested for DUI, child endangerment.
That's scary.
And by the way, and it's like for that answer to come that quickly, like within the hour, like so emphatically.
Mm-hmm.
My uncle had told me I needed custody of her 6 months prior. He died, dude. It was the last thing he told me to do.
Really?
And he died February 10th. And I told him on that, before he died, I told him that was impossible. And this arrest, this night happened in September of the same year. And so then I opened up trying to fight for custody after that. Matt, I got custody of my daughter on February 10th, the anniversary of my uncle's death.
Man, that's wild.
Everyone else told me, even after the DUI, like, dude, you're fighting a losing battle.
Right.
and he was the only one that told me go get her. And so to live through that,
Man.
right? And what happens is you take these actions, you live through that, you trust in yourself and you trust in God because God showed up, right? But then you also took the actions. Same thing when I left my job, right? I took action. I burned the boats. I took the risk. I took that leap of faith, right? All that study time I did, I put in that work. And you get to a point where you look back and you're like, dude, I fought for my daughter. I took that risk. I took that leap of faith. I put the work in. I did this. You know, God always shows up. And there's a certain confidence that before long,
Yep.
you just feel like, man, this is number one, this is going to happen. And number two, I deserve it.
Right. Yep.
And for me, that took about, I'd say it took about 2 years into my journey and after leaving my job where I felt that.
I think that's one of the best parts of entrepreneurship. You know, we start down this path, you know, because everybody starts for a different reason. But obviously, you know, at the end of the day, we want to live as good of a life as we possibly can, whatever that means to you. We want to provide for our families and just live the best life possible. And why wouldn't we? Because we don't know what happens after this life. So why not give it the best shot you possibly can, right? Yep. But what I think is the most beautiful aspect of taking that risk to become an entrepreneur is what it does to you individually. Like that's just stuff that can't be taken away from you. Once you've gone through that stuff and you have that confidence instilled in you because of everything you've been through, because of everything you overcome, because of your ability to produce now, and you've seen what you can do, you've shown yourself what you're made of, that confidence nobody could take that away from you. So even today, Michael, like something crazy could happen tomorrow and your entire organization could disintegrate. Mine too. Like everything that we've built, something crazy can happen. Like there are certain things that are just outside of our control. You just don't know what's going to happen. But what you can't take away is the past and what we have done to develop ourselves, the lessons we've learned. Because see, that's another aspect of it too, is all of this stuff that's happening. Are you harnessing it? Are you actually utilizing it, turning it into something good? Or are you just a victim? Right? You have to take these things are opportunities to take yourself to the next level, to develop yourself, to start to step into the shoes of the person you need to be, the best version of yourself that you need to be in order to reach those goals and to build the success, achieve the success, build the business, etc. I just think that's one of the greatest parts, just looking back on my own journey, you know, when I decided to go down my own path, like a lot of ups and downs, man, it's just a complete roller coaster ride. But I just have this, you know, and I have my bad days just like anybody else, but I just have this unshakable confidence that I know what I'm capable of doing. I know where I'm strong and where my skill sets are, and that you just can't take that away. And a lot of it is because of the stuff that you go through. So yeah, that's like one of the biggest things I get from hearing stories like that is like when you say that, like it built your confidence to where it's at now. I think that's probably the greatest piece of success that you have right there. It's the skills you learn, your confidence, because that's what you bring that into your business every single day. And that's why you're successful. That's why you continue to grow. And of course, now who knows where you're going to be able to, I mean, you know where you can take it because you already know what you can do. But now that you're in the right environment to maximize those skills, to really utilize that confidence, et cetera, man, like the sky's the limit for you at this point. But you had to pay your tuition, man, just like anybody else, just like I have. We pay our tuition as entrepreneurs, man, when we start to go down that path and life starts to show up and, you know, kicks you in the face. You know, what are you going to do at that point, right? That's the real challenge. So
yeah,
incredible story, man.
You got to ignore the noise, right? Because you have these setbacks and you're not where you want to be. And, you know, people even close to you, they're like, well, it's been 2 years, it's been 4 years, it's been 5 years.
Right.
Don't you think you should give up
Do
now?
something else. Go get
It's
a
like,
job again.
you don't get it though.
Right.
You don't
I think
realize
they will.
the progress that you've made over like the individual progress, the growth and development, the figuring things out. Because I mean, for me, it was two shifts, right? The first shift was that confidence, like, dude, I deserve this,
Mhm.
versus all the negative self-talk I used to have. Um, the second shift actually just came this year, so this is my 6th year in the business, right? Um, and the question is no longer, am I gonna succeed? Because that's at this point that's just a foregone conclusion because I know how to run this business. It's now turned into like, dude, what can I create?
Mhm.
And
How far can I go?
it's like it's not even work. It's hard to explain, but it's like, dude, what could I
It's
actually
kind of
do?
it's creation. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah,
Like, what can I create now? Right?
yeah,
How far can I take this thing? Yeah, that's good
yeah.
stuff, man.
And dude, I've taken time. I've learned how to over the last 6 months. I learned how to develop marketing systems, funnels, landing pages, automations. We have a CRM in place for our team in particular, and dude, there's been so much progress, and it's all with the IC Life branding,
Right.
and it's just like I'm creating my own thing now, right? And
Right.
um, it's nobody else's vision, and that's another thing too. Just get clear on what you want to create on your vision. Um, and when you have a mentor, they shouldn't be having you conform to their vision. They should be teaching you how to think and how to develop yourself so you can actually bring your own vision to life, right? And you got to get clear on what that vision is, though.
Yeah. 100%,
So
man. That's been a pretty fascinating conversation, man. Just incredible story. I really appreciate you sharing it. It's been awesome, and I can't wait to see what you build, man. I've learned a ton from you. You're just a beast, man. And
appreciate
so, guys, I'll put some links down in the description for you to connect with Michael. Put the website down. You got your own YouTube channel, maybe LinkedIn, whatever. We'll put some links down below if you guys want to connect. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing the story, Michael. Any final thoughts? Anything else? Anything specific that you want to share? You think we've covered it?
I think we covered it. I mean, like I said, you got to get clarity. I think that's probably the biggest issue I see is a lack of clarity. Why you're doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even in goal setting, I hear people all the time. They say, "Oh, I want 1,000 agents," or I want this, and it's like, but is that really the goal? Is the goal 1,000 agents, or is it the income that you think 1,000 agents will bring you?
Mm-hmm.
If you had 1,000 agents, but they didn't produce, and you didn't have the income, would you
Right.
still want 1,000 agents?
Right. It's a good
And
question.
when you can get clear on the goal, you can now understand there's more than one way to get to that goal.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it could be through better training. It could be through selling a higher end product, right? Like what we do. We do the participating whole life. We do annuities, retirement, long term care. These are much bigger premiums than final expense. Like we did at
Right.
Family First, right? So the commissions are sometimes 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, right? Um, in with one client.
Right.
And not only that, you got a client for life. You get better referrals because you're like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, you completely changed my whole financial picture. They're excited about it, versus a transactional type of thing where I got my final expense taken care of.
Right.
They're probably not going to refer you a bunch of people, but somebody that you set a financial plan that can change their life, they're going to send you more business.
That's a client for
So,
life. Oftentimes a
yep,
friend too. So
yep,
yeah, that's good stuff, man. Again, I appreciate everything, and look forward to having you on the channel again. It's been an awesome conversation, man. So I really appreciate it.
yeah. Appreciate you having me, Matt.
Yes, sir. All right, we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
Bye.